What happens when the papers for divorce and a paternity test arrive at your door, and your whole family finds out it's not your husband's child? How did I end up losing everything just because I thought I could control the truth, and everyone in my life? This is the story of how my secrets blew up in public, and why I still believe I did nothing wrong. I never thought reconnecting with an old flame would destroy my marriage, but looking back now, sitting alone in this cramped studio apartment while my ex-husband raises his daughter, maybe I should have seen the warning signs. It started innocently enough. Julian Markham reached out through Facebook last spring, just as Daniel and I were going through one of our rough patches. You know how it is in marriage. The same conversations, the same routines, the same predictable intimacy that feels more like obligation than passion. "Lysandra, can't believe I found you," Julian's message read. "Saw you're working at Memorial Hospital now. That's amazing. Would love to catch up sometime." I stared at that message for 20 minutes before responding. Julian had been my college boyfriend, the one who got away. The artist type, with messy brown hair and paint-stained fingers, who made me feel alive in ways Daniel never could. Where Daniel was methodical and safe, Julian was spontaneous and exciting. "Julian, what a surprise. Yes, I'd love to catch up," I typed back. That evening, Daniel came home from his accounting firm with Chinese takeout and his usual tired smile. We ate in front of the TV, making small talk about our days. I mentioned Julian casually. "Remember Julian from college? He reached out today. Isn't that funny how people find you on social media?" Daniel nodded absently, focused on his lo mein. "That's nice, honey." But over the next few weeks, Julian and I began texting regularly. Nothing inappropriate, just friendly conversations about our lives, our careers, shared memories from college. He was working as a freelance graphic designer now, recently divorced, living downtown in one of those trendy loft apartments I'd always envied. The texts came at all hours, during my lunch breaks at the hospital, late at night when Daniel was already asleep, early in the morning before work. Julian had this way of making even mundane conversations feel electric. "What are you doing right now?" He'd text at 11 p.m. "Just watching Netflix." "Daniel's already snoring," I'd respond, then immediately delete the message and retype. "Just relaxing at home." But Julian could read between the lines. "Sounds boring. You deserve better than boring." One evening in late May, Daniel finally said something. We were getting ready for bed when my phone buzzed with another text from Julian. Daniel glanced over as I quickly flipped the phone face down. "You've been on your phone a lot lately," he said, not accusingly, just observing. "It's just work stuff," I lied smoothly. "You know how crazy the hospital gets." "At 11 o'clock at night?" I felt a flash of irritation. "Sometimes, yes. We're not all accountants who get to leave their work at the office, Daniel." He looked hurt, and I immediately felt guilty. But instead of apologizing, I doubled down. "I'm sorry if my job requires me to be available for emergencies. Not everyone can have a 9-to-5 schedule." "I wasn't criticizing your job, Lise. I was just..." "Just what? Keeping track of when I use my phone? That seems a little controlling, don't you think?" Daniel stared at me for a long moment, then quietly turned away and got into bed. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. The next day, I called my sister Naomi during my lunch break. "Daniel's being weird about my phone," I told her. "He's getting all suspicious and paranoid." "Suspicious about what?" Naomi asked. "I don't know. I reconnected with an old college friend, and now Daniel's acting like I'm having an affair or something. It's ridiculous." Naomi made sympathetic noises. "Men can be so insecure. You're allowed to have friends, Lysandra." "Exactly. Julian and I are just friends. We're both adults. Daniel needs to grow up and stop being so jealous." That weekend, we had dinner at Daniel's parents' house. His mother Evelyn had always been cool toward me, though she tried to hide it. She was one of those women who thought no one was good enough for her precious son. During dinner, my phone buzzed several times with texts from Julian. "Popular tonight," Evelyn commented with a tight smile. Just work, I said automatically. But later, when I was helping clear the dishes, I overheard Evelyn talking quietly to Daniel in the kitchen. She seems distracted lately. Is everything okay with you two? We're fine, Mom, Daniel replied, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm just saying, son, you deserve someone who's present, someone who puts you first. I felt my face burn with anger. How dare she judge me? I worked my ass off at that hospital, dealing with life and death situations, while Daniel pushed numbers around on spreadsheets. If I needed a little excitement in my life, a little appreciation from someone who actually valued me, that was my business. That night, after Daniel fell asleep, I texted Julian. Had dinner with the in-laws tonight. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating in this suburban life. You're too vibrant for suburban life, he texted back immediately. Remember how alive you used to be in college? You haven't lost that, have you? I stared at that message for a long time. Had I lost that version of myself? The spontaneous, passionate woman who stayed up all night talking about art and dreams and possibilities. Sometimes I wonder, I typed back. We should meet up soon. I'd love to see you in person, catch up properly. My heart raced as I typed. I'd like that too. The next morning, Daniel was already gone when I woke up. He'd left coffee made and a note. Have a good day, love you. I felt a pang of guilt looking at that note. Daniel was a good man. He worked hard. He was reliable. He loved me. But was that enough? Was I supposed to settle for good enough when I could feel something more electric, more alive, just a text message away? I crumpled up the note and threw it away. That afternoon, Julian suggested we meet for coffee that weekend. There's this great little place downtown called Cafe Luna. Very cozy, great for catching up. I knew I should say no. I knew meeting Julian in person was crossing a line, but I also knew I was going to say yes. Saturday afternoon works for me, I texted back. Perfect. Can't wait to see you, beautiful. I stared at that word, beautiful, for several minutes. When was the last time Daniel had called me beautiful? When was the last time he'd made me feel desired rather than just comfortable? I deleted the text thread and smiled to myself. It was just coffee with an old friend. What could be wrong with that? Saturday arrived grey and drizzly, the kind of weather that made staying home seem sensible. I told Daniel I was meeting my college roommate Sarah for lunch and shopping. That sounds nice, he said, looking up from his laptop where he was working on some client files. Tell Sarah I said hello. The lie came so easily it scared me a little. But Sarah lived in Portland now. It wasn't like Daniel would fact-check. Cafe Luna was exactly the kind of place Julian would choose. Exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and the kind of atmospheric lighting that made everyone look more attractive. I spotted him immediately at a corner table, and my breath caught. He looked good, really good. The years had been kind to Julian. He'd filled out in all the right places, lost the too-thin look he'd had in college. His hair was shorter now, but still had that tousled, artistic vibe. When he smiled and stood to hug me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Genuine excitement. Lysandra, he said, holding the hug just a beat too long. You look incredible. I'd spent an hour getting ready, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a sundress that showed off my figure without being too obvious. You're not so bad yourself. We ordered coffee and fell into easy conversation. Julian told me about his design work, his recent divorce from a woman who never understood his artistic vision. I found myself complaining about Daniel's predictability, his lack of ambition, the way he seemed content with our boring suburban existence. You always wanted more, Julian said, leaning forward. Even in college, you had these big dreams. What happened to those? Life happened, I said, but even as I said it, I felt defensive. Marriage, career, responsibility. But you're only 32. It's not too late to want more. The way he looked at me when he said that made my stomach flutter. We talked for 3 hours, long past when I should have headed home. The conversation flowed like wine, intoxicating and warm. Julian had this way of making me feel seen, understood, appreciated in ways I'd forgotten were possible. When we finally parted ways, he hugged me again, his hand lingering on the small of my back. "We should do this again soon," he said. "I've missed talking to you." "Me too," I admitted. Driving home, I felt more alive than I had in months, but as I pulled into our driveway and saw Daniel's car, reality crashed back. I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, making sure I looked like someone who'd spent the afternoon shopping with a girlfriend. "How was lunch with Sarah?" Daniel asked when I walked in. "Good," I said, hanging up my purse. "We went to that new place downtown." "Buy anything interesting?" "Shit, I was supposed to have been shopping." Nothing really caught my eye. Daniel nodded and went back to his book. The ease of the deception should have bothered me more than it did. Over the next few weeks, Julian and I texted constantly. The messages grew more personal, more flirtatious. He'd send me photos of his artwork, asking for my opinion. I'd complain about difficult days at the hospital, and he'd respond with exactly the kind of sympathy and understanding I craved. "Your husband doesn't appreciate what he has," Julian texted one evening, after I'd vented about Daniel falling asleep during a movie I'd wanted to watch together. "Sometimes I wonder if we're just too different," I replied. "You deserve someone who matches your energy, someone who sees how amazing you are." I knew I should stop. I knew these conversations were inappropriate, but they filled a need I hadn't even realized I had. Julian made me feel special, desired, interesting. With him, I wasn't just Daniel's wife or a hospital administrator. I was Lysandra, vibrant, intelligent, worthy of passion. We met for coffee again the following Saturday, then the Saturday after that. Our conversations grew more intimate. Julian would touch my hand when making a point, compliment my appearance, tell me how much he looked forward to our meetings. "I think about you during the week," he admitted during our third coffee date. "Wonder what you're doing. Wish I could text you more often." "You can text me any time," I said, even though I knew it was dangerous. "Even late at night, even when you're home with your husband." The question hung between us, loaded with implication. I should have said no, should have established boundaries. Instead, I heard myself say, "especially then." That night, my phone buzzed at 11:30 p.m. with a message from Julian. "Are you awake?" Daniel was asleep beside me, snoring softly. I slipped out of bed and went to the bathroom to respond. "Can't sleep. You?" "Thinking about this afternoon, about you." My heart raced as I typed back, "What about me?" "How beautiful you looked in that blue dress. How your eyes light up when you laugh. How much I wish we had more time together." I stared at the message, knowing I was at a crossroads. I could end this now, delete his number, focus on my marriage, or I could step over the line I'd been dancing around for weeks. "I wish that too," I typed. The next morning, I woke up to find Daniel already dressed for work, standing by the dresser with a strange expression on his face. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Your phone was buzzing all night," he said quietly. "I didn't want to wake you, but it kept lighting up." My blood turned cold. I'd forgotten to put it on silent when I came back to bed. "Probably just work notifications," I said, reaching for the phone. "You know how the system sends alerts." But Daniel was watching me carefully. At midnight, and 2 a.m. "The hospital operates 24 hours, Daniel. People don't stop having emergencies just because it's nighttime." He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. "Right, of course." After he left for work, I checked my messages. Julian had sent several more texts after our initial exchange, each one more intimate than the last. I quickly deleted them, but the damage was done. Daniel was suspicious now. I needed to be more careful. That afternoon, I called Naomi again. "Daniel's being paranoid about my phone," I told her. "He's starting to act like some kind of jealous stalker." "That's not like Daniel," Naomi said. "He's usually so laid back." "I know, right? I think the stress of work is getting to him. He's becoming controlling and suspicious. It's honestly making me question our relationship. Oh, Liz, I'm sorry you're going through this. Marriage is hard. It shouldn't be this hard. I should be able to have friends without my husband interrogating me about every text message. You're absolutely right. You deserve trust and respect. Talking to Naomi made me feel validated. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just maintaining a friendship with someone who appreciated me. If Daniel couldn't handle that, maybe the problem was with him, not me. That weekend, Julian suggested we meet somewhere more private. I know a great little wine bar, he texted. Very quiet, very intimate. We could actually talk without worrying about being overheard. I knew what he was really suggesting. A wine bar was more romantic than a coffee shop, more like a date. That sounds perfect, I replied. The wine bar was dimly lit and tucked away on a side street I'd never explored. Julian had chosen well. It was the kind of place where conversation stayed private and people minded their own business. We sat in a secluded booth, sharing a bottle of red wine that loosened my tongue and my inhibitions. I've been thinking about what you said, Julian murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on the table dangerously close to my hand. About questioning your relationship. Have you? I took another sip of wine, feeling bold and reckless. You're too vibrant to be stuck in something that doesn't fulfill you. Life's too short to settle for comfortable when you could have passionate. His hand finally covered mine, and I didn't pull away. The touch sent electricity up my arm. Daniel's a good man, I said, but the words felt hollow. Good isn't enough for someone like you. You need someone who sees your fire, who matches it. When he leaned across the table and kissed me, I kissed him back. It was soft at first, tentative, then deeper, as I melted into the feeling of being desired again. When we broke apart, I was breathless. I should go, I whispered, but I didn't move. Should and want are two different things, Julian said. What do you want, Lysandra? I wanted to feel alive. I wanted to feel beautiful and desired and appreciated. I wanted to remember what passion felt like. I want another glass of wine, I said. We stayed until closing time. Julian walked me to my car, and we kissed again under the streetlight like teenagers. I drove home with my lips still tingling and my heart racing. Daniel was already in bed when I got home, but he wasn't asleep. How was girls' night? He asked as I tried to slip quietly into the bathroom. Fun, I said, grateful for the darkness hiding my flushed cheeks. We went to that new place on 5th Street. Which friends were there? The question caught me off guard. Just the usual group, Sarah, Michelle, Karen. I rattled off names of college friends, most of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. That's nice. You seem happier lately. There was something in his tone I couldn't quite identify. Sadness, resignation, but I was too wine-drunk and guilt-ridden to analyze it. Over the next month, Julian and I met regularly, always somewhere discreet, always with careful alibis. Our relationship had shifted into something undeniably romantic, though we hadn't slept together yet. The anticipation was intoxicating. My behavior at home became increasingly erratic. I was distracted during conversations with Daniel, impatient with his routines, critical of things that had never bothered me before. You never want to do anything spontaneous, I complained one evening when he suggested we stay in and watch a movie. We could go out if you want, he offered. Where would you like to go? That's not the point. You should want to go out. You should suggest exciting things instead of always defaulting to the couch. Daniel looked confused and hurt. I thought you liked our quiet evenings together. Well, maybe I want more than quiet evenings. Maybe I want to feel alive occasionally. The argument escalated from there, with me accusing Daniel of being boring and predictable, and him trying desperately to understand what had changed. I knew I was being unfair, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. Every conversation with Julian made me more aware of what I felt was missing in my marriage. Things came to a head at Daniel's brother Greg's birthday party in late July. It was a backyard barbecue with about 30 people, family, friends, co-workers. I'd been texting with Julian all afternoon, and he'd sent me a particularly sweet message about wishing he could be there with me. "You look beautiful today," the text read. "Wish I could tell you in person." I was smiling at my phone when Daniel's mother Evelyn appeared beside me. "You seem distracted, dear," she said with that tight smile I'd come to recognize as barely concealed dislike. "Just work stuff," I said automatically. "On a Saturday? At a family party?" I felt my temper flare. "My job doesn't stop just because it's the weekend, Evelyn. Some of us have responsibilities that extend beyond business hours." "Of course," she said smoothly. "It's just that you've been on your phone quite a bit lately. Daniel mentioned you've been getting a lot of late-night calls." The implication was clear, and I was furious. How dare she question me? How dare Daniel discuss our private business with his mother? "I'm a hospital administrator," I said loudly enough that several nearby conversations stopped. "I'm on call for emergencies. If that's inconvenient for anyone, I'm sorry, but people's lives are more important than social etiquette." The party went quiet. Daniel appeared at my elbow, looking mortified. "Liz, Mom didn't mean—" "Oh, I think she meant exactly what she said," I snapped. "Your mother has always thought I wasn't good enough for you, and now she's implying I'm lying about work calls. Well, I'm sorry if my career is too demanding for this family's comfort." "That's not what anyone said," Greg interjected, trying to keep the peace at his own party. But I was on a roll now, fueled by wine and righteous indignation, and the secret knowledge that I was everything they suspected and worse. "No, let's get this out in the open," I said. "Evelyn thinks I'm a bad wife because I have a life outside this house, because I have friends and interests that don't revolve around Daniel, because I refuse to be the kind of woman who loses herself in marriage." The party was completely silent now. Daniel's face was red with embarrassment. "Lysandra, please," he said quietly. Let's just what? Pretend your family doesn't judge me. Pretend your mother doesn't make little comments every chance she gets." I stormed off to the bathroom, my hands shaking with adrenaline. My phone buzzed with another text from Julian. "Everything okay? You haven't responded to my last message." Without thinking, I typed back, "Family drama. Wish you were here to rescue me." "I'd rescue you any time, you know that, right?" I stared at that message, feeling a rush of warmth and gratitude. Here was someone who appreciated me, who would defend me, who saw my worth. When I returned to the party, the atmosphere was strained. People made polite conversation, but I could feel their judgment. Daniel's family thought I was a bitch, and honestly, I didn't care. They didn't understand the pressure I was under, the way I felt suffocated by their expectations. The drive home was silent except for the radio. Finally, Daniel spoke. "What's happening to us, Lise?" "What do you mean?" "You're different. You're angry all the time. You're always on your phone. You pick fights over nothing. I feel like I don't know you anymore." "Maybe you never knew me," I said, the words coming out harsher than I intended. "Maybe you fell in love with some idea of who you wanted me to be, and now you're disappointed that I'm not that person." "That's not true. I fell in love with you, the real you. The woman who laughed at my terrible jokes and stayed up all night talking about everything and nothing. The woman who was kind and generous and made me want to be better." His words hit me like a slap. That woman felt like a stranger now. "People change, Daniel. People grow. Maybe I've outgrown this version of myself. Or maybe someone else is helping you grow in a different direction." The accusation hung in the air between us. I could have denied it, could have reassured him, could have ended this before it went any further. Instead, I went on the attack. "There you go again with the paranoid jealousy. I can't have a conversation with a male colleague or reconnect with an old friend without you making it into something sinister. Is that what this is? An old friend?" "Yes, that's exactly what it is. Julian is a friend from college who's been supportive during a difficult time in my marriage. I'm sorry if that threatens you." I saw Daniel flinch when I said Julian's name, so he'd been paying closer attention than I'd realized. "How supportive?" he asked quietly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm not stupid, Lysandra. It means I can see what's happening, even if you won't admit it." We pulled into our driveway, and I got out of the car without another word. But as I walked to the front door, I felt a strange sense of relief. The secret was almost out. Soon I wouldn't have to pretend anymore. That night, I texted Julian about the fight. "I think Daniel knows," I wrote. "About us? He suspects something. What do you want to do?" I stared at that question for a long time. What did I want to do? "I want to see you tomorrow," I typed. "I want to stop pretending." "My place?" My heart pounded as I typed, "Yes." Julian's loft was everything I'd imagined. Exposed brick walls covered with his artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. It was the opposite of the suburban house I shared with Daniel, with its matching furniture sets and family photos. "Welcome to my world," Julian said, opening a bottle of wine, even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. I'd told Daniel I was going shopping with Naomi, another lie that came easily now. The web of deception was getting complicated, but I was past caring. "It's beautiful," I said, walking to the windows that overlooked the city. "So different from my life." "It could be your life," Julian said, coming up behind me. "If you wanted it to be." When he put his arms around me, I leaned back against his chest. This was what I'd been missing. This feeling of being desired, of being chosen, of being the center of someone's attention. "It's complicated," I murmured. "It doesn't have to be." He turned me around and kissed me, and this time I didn't hesitate. We made love that afternoon, with a passion I'd forgotten existed. Desperate and hungry and alive, in ways that made my marriage feel like sleepwalking. Afterward, lying in his bed, I felt like I was finally myself again. "I should go," I said, but I didn't move. "Should," Julian said, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. That word again. "Daniel will wonder where I am." Will he? Or will he just assume you're off living your mysterious other life? I thought about that. Daniel had stopped asking detailed questions about my whereabouts. He'd stopped trying to make plans with me. Had he given up on us already? "I don't know what he thinks anymore," I admitted. "Maybe it's time to stop worrying about what he thinks and start thinking about what you want." What I wanted was to stay in this bed, in this fantasy world where I was appreciated and desired. But reality was waiting at home. I got dressed and drove back to my real life, but something had fundamentally shifted. I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Over the next few weeks, Julian and I began meeting at his apartment regularly. Our relationship became intensely physical and emotional. He made me feel beautiful, interesting, worthy of grand passion. With him, I wasn't a suburban wife going through the motions. I was a woman having a great love affair. My behavior at home became increasingly erratic. I was either euphoric from seeing Julian or depressed about having to return to my mundane life with Daniel. I picked fights over trivial things, criticized Daniel constantly, and spent most of my time texting or thinking about when I'd see Julian again. Daniel tried several times to talk to me about what was happening between us, but I deflected every attempt. I told myself he was boring, that he didn't understand me, that we'd simply grown apart. It was easier than admitting what I was really doing. The breaking point came in early September. I'd been feeling unwell for a few days, nauseous, exhausted, emotional. At first, I thought it was stress from juggling my double life. Then I missed my period. I took the pregnancy test in the bathroom at work, my hands shaking as I waited for the result. When the second line appeared, my world tilted. I was pregnant. The timing made it impossible to know for certain who the father was. Daniel and I still had sex occasionally, though it felt perfunctory compared to the passion I shared with Julian. But I'd been with both men within the relevant time frame. I sat in that bathroom stall for 20 minutes, trying to process what this meant. A baby would complicate everything, but it would also force a decision I'd been avoiding. That evening, I told Daniel about the pregnancy. His face lit up with joy. "Really? We're having a baby?" He pulled me into his arms, spinning me around our kitchen. "This is incredible, Lise. This is exactly what we needed." His happiness made me feel sick with guilt, but I pushed the feeling down. Maybe this was a sign. Maybe this baby would save our marriage, make me remember why I'd fallen in love with Daniel in the first place. But when I told Julian the next day, his reaction was completely different. "Are you sure it's not mine?" he asked immediately. "I don't know," I admitted. "The timing. It could be either of you." Julian was quiet for a long moment, then, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to have the baby, and I'm going to let Daniel believe it's his." "And if it's not?" I looked at Julian, this man who'd awakened something in me I'd thought was dead, and realized he wasn't offering to leave his bachelor lifestyle to raise a child with me. He wasn't talking about us building a life together. He was asking what I was going to do about the problem I'd created. "Then, no one ever has to know," I said. The pregnancy should have ended my affair with Julian, but instead, it intensified it. I felt reckless and emotional, desperate to hold on to the passion I'd found with him before my life became consumed by diapers and domestic routine. Daniel was over the moon about becoming a father. He bought pregnancy books, started planning the nursery, told everyone who would listen about the baby. His excitement made me feel even more guilty, but also resentful. Why couldn't he have shown this kind of enthusiasm for me before I got pregnant? At the same time, Julian began pulling away. Our meetings became less frequent, our conversations more superficial. When I confronted him about it, he claimed he was just giving me space to focus on my pregnancy and marriage. "I don't want space," I told him. "I want you. This is complicated now, Lysandra. You're having a baby. That doesn't change how I feel about you." But I could see it had changed how he felt about me. I was no longer the carefree woman having an exciting affair. I was a pregnant married woman with serious complications. The fantasy had become messy reality. By my second trimester, Julian was barely responding to my texts. When I finally confronted him at his apartment, he was honest in a way that shattered me. "I care about you," he said, "but I'm not ready to be a father, especially to a child that might not even be mine. And I'm not ready to be the reason you blow up your marriage." "You're abandoning me," I accused. "I'm being realistic. You have a husband who loves you and wants this baby. Maybe you should focus on that." I left his apartment in tears, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. I'd risked everything for Julian, and now he was walking away just when I needed him most. But I couldn't bring myself to confess to Daniel. He was so happy about the baby, so attentive and caring during my pregnancy. Telling him the truth would destroy him, and what would be the point now that Julian was gone? So I played the role of happy, expectant mother, all while dying inside from the loss of the great love I'd thought I'd found. The baby was born on a cold February morning after 12 hours of labor. Daniel was there for every contraction, holding my hand and telling me how proud he was of me. When our daughter, Mira, was finally placed in my arms, I looked into her tiny face, searching for clues about her paternity. She had dark hair like both Daniel and Julian. Her eyes were blue, but all babies' eyes are blue at first. There was no definitive answer in her features. "She's perfect," Daniel whispered, tears in his eyes. "She looks just like you." I wanted to feel the overwhelming love new mothers are supposed to experience, but all I felt was anxiety and guilt. This tiny person was either the product of my marriage or my affair, and I might never know which. Over the next few months, as Mira grew and changed, I found myself studying her features obsessively. Did her nose look like Daniel's? Were her eyes the same shade as Julian's? The uncertainty was driving me crazy. Meanwhile, Daniel was a devoted father. He took night feedings without complaint, changed diapers cheerfully, spent hours just staring at Mira with wonder. Watching him with her made me feel even worse about what I'd done. but it also made me resentful. Where had this attentive, caring man been during our marriage? Why had it taken a baby to bring out his best qualities? When Mira was 4 months old, I made a decision that would ultimately destroy everything. I reached out to Julian again. "I miss you," I texted. "I made a mistake letting you go." He didn't respond for 3 days. When he finally did, his message was brief. "How's the baby?" "She's beautiful. I think she has your eyes." Another long pause. Then, "Lysandra, we can't do this." "Can't do what? I'm just telling you about my daughter." "Is she my daughter?" The question hung there between us, loaded with possibility and danger. "I don't know," I typed, "but I'd like to find out." Getting back in touch with Julian felt like coming alive again after months of sleepwalking through new motherhood. He was hesitant at first, but curiosity about Mira's paternity eventually overcame his caution. We started meeting for coffee again, this time with me bringing Mira along. Julian would study her tiny features with an intensity that made my heart race. "She does have my eyes," he said during our third meeting, holding her while she slept peacefully in his arms. "I think so too," I whispered, though honestly I still couldn't tell. Daniel noticed my improved mood, but attributed it to adjusting to motherhood. He'd started working longer hours to support our growing family, which gave me more freedom to meet Julian. "You seem happier lately," Daniel commented one evening as he watched me give Mira her bath. "I'm just feeling more like myself again," I said, which was true in a way. But the situation with Julian was complicated. He was fascinated by the possibility that Mira might be his daughter, but he wasn't interested in resuming our romantic relationship. He'd started dating someone new, a photographer named Claire, who didn't have messy complications like husbands and uncertain paternity. This rejection stung worse than before. I'd thought having his possible child would bring us closer together, but instead, it just highlighted how much he'd moved on, while I was still trapped in my suburban life. My resentment toward Daniel grew stronger. He had everything: a wife, a daughter he adored, a stable family life, while I felt like I was dying inside. I started picking fights again, criticizing everything from his parenting style to his career ambitions. "You never take initiative," I complained one Saturday morning when he asked what I wanted to do that day. "I thought you liked when we made decisions together," he said, looking confused. "I like when you have opinions, when you show some passion about something, anything." "I'm passionate about you and Mira." "That's not what I mean, and you know it." These arguments became more frequent and more vicious. I was taking out my frustration about Julian on Daniel, who had no idea what was really happening. The situation reached a crisis point when Mira was 8 months old. I'd been meeting Julian regularly, sometimes bringing Mira, sometimes leaving her with Daniel, while I claimed to be running errands. Julian's interest in potentially being her father had rekindled some of our old intimacy, though he maintained he was committed to Claire. One afternoon, we were at his apartment with Mira when things went too far. She was napping in her carrier, and Julian and I were sitting close together on his couch, looking through photos on my phone. "She's so beautiful," he murmured, his hand covering mine. "If she's mine—" "She could be," I said softly. "We could find out for sure." "How?" "A paternity test. It's simple, just a cheek swab." Julian was quiet for a long moment. "And if she is mine, what then?" "Then we figure it out, together." The hope in my voice was embarrassing, but I couldn't help it. I was desperate for something, anything, to change in my life. Julian kissed me then, soft and tentative at first, then with growing passion. We made love on his couch while Mira slept peacefully nearby, and for those stolen moments, I felt like myself again. Afterward, as we lay tangled together, Julian brought up the paternity test again. "We should do it," he said. "I need to know." "Okay," I agreed, though part of me was terrified of the answer. We ordered an at-home paternity test kit online, planning to do it the following week when I could bring Mira to his apartment again. But our plans were derailed by an unexpected visitor. I was at Julian's place the next Tuesday, having told Daniel I was taking Mira to a Mommy and Me class, when my phone rang. It was my sister Naomi. "Hey, where are you?" she asked. "I stopped by your house to surprise you, and Daniel said you were at a class, but the community center says there's no class today." My blood ran cold. "Oh, they cancelled last minute. I decided to take Mira to the park instead." "Which park? I'll come meet you." "We're actually just leaving," I said quickly. "Mira's getting fussy." But the call rattled me. Daniel was starting to fact-check my alibis, which meant he was getting suspicious again. That evening, he confronted me directly. "There was no Mommy and Me class today," he said as I was getting ready for bed. "I know, it was cancelled. I told you I took Mira to the park instead." "Which park?" "The one by the lake. Why are you interrogating me?" "Because you've been lying to me, Lysandra, about where you go, who you see, what you do during the day." My heart was pounding, but I went on the offensive. "I'm a new mother trying to get out of the house occasionally. I'm sorry if I don't provide you with detailed itineraries of every moment of my day." "This isn't about itineraries. This is about trust, and I don't trust you anymore." The words hung in the air between us. I could have come clean then, could have confessed everything and tried to save our marriage. Instead, I doubled down on the lies. "If you don't trust me, that's your problem, not mine. I've never given you any real reason not to trust me." "Haven't you?" "No, I haven't, and I'm tired of being treated like a criminal in my own home." Daniel stared at me for a long moment, then quietly left the room. I heard him making a phone call from his office, but I couldn't make out the words. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. He'd left a note saying he was staying at his brother Greg's for a few days to think things through. I should have been panicked, but instead, I felt relieved. With Daniel gone, I could see Julian, without having to lie about my whereabouts. We did the paternity test that afternoon. It was surprisingly simple, just a cheek swab from Mira and another from Julian. The kit promised results within 5 business days. "What will you do if she's mine?" Julian asked as we sealed the samples in their respective containers. "I don't know," I admitted. "Leave Daniel, I guess. Start over." "With me?" The question I'd been afraid to ask directly. "I'd like to try." Julian was quiet for a long moment. "Claire and I are getting serious." "But if Mira is your daughter, then I'll want to be part of her life, but that doesn't necessarily mean we'd be together, Lysandra." His words hit me like ice water. Even if the test proved he was Mira's father, he wasn't promising me the fairy tale ending I'd been imagining. When Daniel came home 3 days later, he was different, distant, formal, like he was already mentally preparing for divorce. "We need to talk," he said. "Okay." "I've been thinking about us, about what's been happening. I think we should consider counseling." "Counseling?" The suggestion caught me off guard. "Our marriage is in trouble, Lise. We both know it. Maybe a neutral third party can help us figure out if it's worth saving." I wanted to refuse, to tell him it was too late, that I'd already moved on. But the paternity test results weren't back yet, and Julian had made it clear that even if Mira was his, he wasn't necessarily choosing me. "Okay," I said, "we can try counseling." But even as I agreed, I knew it was pointless. My heart was already elsewhere, even if that elsewhere didn't want me back. The paternity test results arrived on a Friday afternoon while Daniel was at work. I stared at the envelope for 10 minutes before opening it, knowing that whatever was inside would change everything. The results were definitive. Julian was Mira's biological father. I sat in my kitchen, holding the proof of my infidelity, and felt a strange mix of vindication and terror. I'd been right about the connection I felt between Julian and Mira, but now I had to decide what to do with this information. That evening, I called Julian. "The results are in," I said without preamble. "And?" "You're her father." Silence stretched between us. Finally, Jesus. So what now? I don't know. I need to think. Julian, this changes everything. We have a daughter together. I know what it means, Lysandra, but it doesn't change the fact that you're married to someone else. Someone who thinks he's her father. But he's not. You are. And you think that makes this simple? I was quiet, realizing the paternity results hadn't solved anything, just created new complications. I need time to process this, Julian said. Don't do anything rash. But I was past caution. That night, I posted cryptically on social media. Sometimes the truth changes everything. Ready for a new chapter. Comments flooded in. Friends asking if Daniel and I were okay, offering support. I felt validated. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. But I just fired the first shot in a war I wasn't prepared to fight.